You've heard of keto diets, vegan diets, paleo diets, all kinds of diets for beating diabetes. But have you ever heard of a pragmatic diet? You'll learn about that today. Well, this man says, "Thank you, Dennis. I am on the path to normal blood sugar. I was at 10 A1C, now at 5.9. Wow, tremendous improvement. 3 years ago on a strict vegan diet without eating refined sugar. That's what took me on a ride straight up to a 10 A1C. In a few short months following your advice, I'm now in the 5s. God bless. I watch all your videos now on both your channels." Wow, wow, and double wow. That is a great testimony, and it's interesting. He said, "I was a vegan for 3 years, and it took me right up to a 10 A1C." And he said, "I didn't even eat refined sugar." Well, of course, I know that vegan can involve a lot of different ways of eating. Basically, if you don't eat meat and animal products, everything else is up to you. You can call yourself a vegan if you stuff yourself with donuts or if you eat salads or whatever. But this guy was not really that bad of a vegan. He says, "I did not eat refined sugar." So that's a plus. But still, it got him up to a 10 A1C. And the idea that if you simply don't eat meat, you'll never become diabetic is one of the biggest myths and really one of the stupidest myths that is around, because it's so easy to disprove, and this guy is the perfect example of that. Did the vegan thing didn't work for him? I know the standard answer is, well, you might have been a vegan, but you weren't enough of a vegan. You weren't a raw vegan, or you weren't this kind or that kind. But whatever he was, and he doesn't go into detail, apart from the idea that he didn't eat refined sugar, it didn't work. And that brings me to a word that I think is a good word, although some people might not like it. The word is pragmatic. And let me just read you a definition of pragmatic. It is dealing with things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations. And a shorter version of that definition would be going for things that actually work. Not nice theories, but things that work. And I've always been for that. You might say, well, you're a Christian. You just believe the Bible, right? Yeah, I do. But there's a lot of things the Bible doesn't speak directly about. And one of those is diabetes. There's a few verses I could point to, and I have done a video on that relate to the Bible and truths that help in the fight against diabetes. But the word diabetes is not in the Bible. So when I was threatened with diabetes, I was on my own, apart from just praying. And I had to figure out what was going to work and what wasn't. And is there a way out? I read some books. There was no YouTube, but I did read books. And I tested my blood sugar, and I found that it worked. Thinking about this reminded me of years ago when I was a kid, maybe 12, 13 years old. I used to play all kinds of sports with my buddy Tom. Tom was my best friend growing up. And we loved sports. We loved every kind of sport. We loved baseball and football and bowling and anything else. So one of the sports that we played, or one of the games that we played, was wiffle ball. Wiffle ball was kind of nice because you don't have to go to a park to play it, and he had a yard big enough to be able to play wiffle ball without any problem, and if you could hit it over the fence, that was considered a home run. And we learned something, not because we read it in a book or because somebody did a lecture on it. We just learned it by trying it. And I forget whether it was he or I, but one of us figured out that you can hit a wiffle ball a mile farther if you swing with one hand instead of two hands the way you normally would with a baseball. And one of us, I forget which, started swinging one-handed and just knocking the ball over the fence almost every time. And then the other did it. And before long, we were hitting home runs constantly. And we finally had to make a rule, if I remember right, that said no more one-handed swings. We were hitting too many home runs. But that was just a pragmatic thing that we learned. It was just by way of trying something and finding out it works. So when I started having blood sugar problems, I was open to whatever. I was not biased in the least. In fact, I went the vegetarian way for a while, and I had read somebody that said this is the secret to beating diabetes is to go vegetarian and drop off all the meat. So I did, and things got immediately worse. So I just experimented. I read some books. I used Mike the meter, the blood sugar meter. Lo and behold, my experience, and by trying things out, I realize this works and the other doesn't. So I immediately shifted over and went to a diet that had meat in it. I was never against meat for any kind of theological reasons or any kind of spiritual reasons. I believe God placed animals on the earth for our food, some of them anyway. So that was never a problem, but I wanted something that worked, and it wouldn't matter what it would have been. I was willing to try anything because I was having a lot of problems. But I found out that by just cutting the carbs way down, things resolved in a hurry for me. And while we're talking about the vegan diet, let me just say this. The problem with the vegan diet is not because they don't eat meat. It's possible to have good glucose control and still not eat meat. You don't have to eat meat, but your options are a bit limited. The problem is, in many cases, when people do not eat meat, they substitute carbs for the meat because you got to eat something. You cannot simply scrimp by and barely eat and get all skinny and feel like you're living a good life. We all have to eat. So if you're going to say no meat, no eggs, no dairy, none of this other stuff, then what's left? Well, typically the answer is carbs, carbs, and more carbs. And that's what they do. Now, like I said, it is possible to do the vegan thing and keep it relatively low carb. And if that's what you choose to do, then, fine. As long as Mike says you're doing okay, you're doing okay. As long as your blood sugar meter is telling you that it's working out. And I don't condemn people for their beliefs. If you believe eating an animal is wrong, then it's wrong for you. I don't believe that. So don't you judge me for eating, and I won't judge you for not eating animal products. I want to remind you about my other YouTube channel, which goes simply by my name, Dennis Pollock. On this channel, I am uploading one video per week, and I call these videos Video Devos or Video Devotionals. In these brief 6 or 7 minute talks, I discuss key Bible topics on all kinds of subjects, such as who will go to heaven, what about those who never hear the gospel, God's definition of a virtuous woman, predestination, was Jesus a conservative, will God give me whatever I ask, the nature of hell, is it safe to go with your gut? Did Jesus and Paul preach 2 different gospels? And a whole lot more. I also use historical events and biographies to illustrate biblical truths, including devos featuring Muhammad Ali, Bonnie and Clyde, the sinking of the Titanic, Mickey Mantle, Ulysses S. Grant, Heinrich Himmler, and others. So check out my Video Devo channel, which goes by my name, Dennis Pollock.